Now, I did a little bit of this on day one, but we're going to be doing a lot more of this in general. We're going to be, now this is an interesting way to experiment. This is an interesting way to play with code. It's an interesting way to learn, right? However, this is not how we write programs. How we write programs is using a file. And there's many different ways of doing it. This is just one way. IDLE comes with a file editor, a text editor. And if I steal all of this, and you're going to see something interesting happen here as well. Let me edit all this code just to have just the commands that we used in Python. Something interesting is going to happen here. By the way, that's called a big wall of text. Try to avoid big walls of text, only because they're really hard to read. So if we save this, and I'm just going to drop this, actually, let me drop this in the lecture folder so that you actually will have access to all the files I generate from the schedule. So this is Python from a file. So we wrote all that code, but then we have to run it. And so we run module from here. Why did I do so much code, but it only printed one thing? I want you to think about that for a second. I did all that code, but only one thing happened. So when you're running in the immediate window or this console thing here, when you put a command in there, it just automatically prints the answer. That's not what Python does, though. Python doesn't show us that kind of thing. When you have Python in a file, the only thing we see are print statements. If we want to see stuff, let me make sure I close all those parentheses. So if I want to see all those answers, I have to use print statements. Only print statements are actually shown. And by the way, you don't see me doing it, but every time I make these changes, I'm Control-S-ing just to save it, because you need to save before you run it, or you won't see the changes. Now, if I run this, I'm getting all the numbers. Now, part of the problem is that those numbers don't mean anything. I'm looking at this going, what are those numbers? I don't know. So let's print some labels. And I'm going to constantly do this. And I don't want to do a whole bunch of these, but you can see what I'm doing here, right? I'm just kind of labeling what's happening. And there's better ways of doing this. And we're going to talk about some of those ways. Just adding labels. That's enough of those. And now if we print, now we start seeing labels. What's the max of 377? What's the min of 373? Some absolute values, some max values. They all kind of work. This is an actual Python program. I could send this program to any of you and you could run it, which is the benefit of a program. Now with Python, that's it. You just send a text file to someone and they can run it. You can download code off the internet. Be careful. Don't really do that. Some of that code on the internet's way too kind of advanced for this course, and some of it's just not good in the first place. But you could download examples, create things of your own, paste them, send them to people, and they can run your program as long as they have a Python interpreter. I could also, in other editors, including command prompt on Windows, you have a terminal on Mac. I stuck that in a folder that's pretty deep. I'm probably not going to find it easily, but I could run it from here. The command line has a Python interpreter. And I could also run Python files. I don't have that file here, but I can navigate to that folder, which I think is in the G drive. My drive, maybe. CSE8. Nope. Sometimes finding these things, there is a CSE8A in there. This is summer. I know it's like really buried. 21.2. I put it in lectures. I put it in lectures 03. Oh, it's not 03 apparently. You see why I really didn't want to go through this. Lecture 03. And yes, spelling matters. And there's my Python program. So now I can do Python from a file, .py, and it does the exact same thing. And I did that completely outside of idle. Because I have Python installed, I can run Python outside of idle. And just type in the command Python, which is exactly what this did. It took this file. In fact, I would have been smart. I would have grabbed this link right there. It took that file and it ran it. So if I was on the C drive where I started and I just typed Python and I pasted that file in there, has spaces in it, so it needs quotes. And it still ran. And in fact, that's exactly what's happening. When I type run, that's what it's doing. It's exactly what it's doing. And it's just putting the output in here. So that's what we're going to be doing. Majority of the course is writing our programs to do that. So when you have the prompt, like we're doing, we can type statements. It evaluates those statements, shows us the results, shows what's printed by the statement. But remember, it's actually just printing out the values. And those statements cannot be saved. As soon as we close the thing, it's over. Whereas files, we can place them in a file. We can save our file. We can run all of those statements in the file at one time. It executes in order, top to bottom, and you only see what is printed. You won't see any of the other values. So some differences. But this is the normal way of writing programs. The prompt is just a great way for experimenting and seeing what's going on.